Hey y'all, it's Jennifer Farr Davis, your policy guide with Crossing Our Divide. And this week, we get some good news. If this policy journey is anything like a long distance hike, like the Appalachian Trail, then the beginning and the end are usually the very best parts. But there is also typically a sweet spot in the middle where you don't feel too overwhelmed or beaten down. Instead, you've got your legs underneath you and you can crank miles. That's where we are the next 2 weeks. We're kind of in the Shenandoah National Park of our policy journey. These miles aren't free, but they're going to feel good. One of the goals of this policy journey is to shed light on the changemakers who are already doing the work. At Crossing Our Divide, we don't want to reinvent the wheel and create disparate energy when we can combine our knowledge and efforts with movements that already have traction. The reality of us really not liking each other in America this much is a relatively new fad. But there are already a number of amazing people and groups who are trying to address the causes of extreme polarization in a way that brings us back together and reminds us that we can be better off if we work across the aisle and remember our strong commonalities and see the good in our differences. So, without further ado, here is our starting five. And yes, I've been watching a lot of basketball recently. Number 1, open secrets. You know how we looked at research which suggests that unregulated campaign funding is a major cause of our extreme divisions? Well, Open Secrets is shedding light and providing a huge amount of transparency in this space. They spend time examining and disclosing donor information across the political spectrum. For example, they just collected data and released a report around the $4.2 billion spent on lobbying last year. So if you want to know what individuals, corporations, and advocacy or interest groups are influencing the decisions made in your region, state, and country, then check out Open Secrets. Because when you know where the money is coming from and what it is being used to do, it is easier to keep it from vying your vote and your thoughts and perceptions of others. Number 2, issue 1. In our last blog, we said that America maybe needed a relationship counselor, and issue 1 is pretty close to that. Their stated goal is to unite Republicans, Democrats, and independents in the movement to fix our broken political system and build an inclusive democracy that works for everyone. They go about that work through education and advocacy efforts that are aimed at passing legislation to improve elections, reduce big money in politics, work towards healthier digital media systems, improve ethics, accountability, and transparency. Their Reformers Caucus includes nearly 200 former representatives, elected officials, and government leaders who are now pouring their time and energy into bipartisan reform for better government. Number 3, Represent Us. This is another nonpartisan group that looks to bring people across the political spectrum together to create a groundswell of political reform at the state and local level, with the strategy of building up a national movement in support of these objectives. In the influence of money in politics, demand accountability and transparency in government, challenge the two-party system, put country over party, make elections accessible and secure for all, and expand freedom and move us towards a truly representative democracy. Number 4, Snopes. If media and misinformation are making our divide worse, where do we go to fact check the news? We go to Snopes. And if we're lucky, we can learn the truth behind politics and debunk an urban legend or legitimize celebrity gossip while we're there. Yes, Snopes is more than just politics, but it's also a highly credible source for fact-checking the news. For example, I was doing research before Super Tuesday on voting options, and I was looking up Governor candidate Mark Robinson in North Carolina. And there's this quote he has out there that says he wants to go back to an America before women could vote. But then I was looking on Snopes and I learned that that quote was taken entirely out of context. So you can argue on whether he should have said it or not, or look at the overall point he was trying to make. But when you see what he was saying in its full context, it certainly comes across differently. Now, number 5 is no labels. And I was on the fence about whether or not to include them because now technically they are a political party, and Crossing Our Divide is not here to support or endorse any political party. But No Labels also has a 10-year history of trying to break down the barriers that exist for candidates outside the 2 major parties, and they help form the Problem Solvers Caucus. And that's bringing together Republicans and Democrats in Congress with the intent of creating more cross-party conversation in order to effectively accomplish common goals that serve the American people. So even if you're not on board for a third-party breakthrough, it's still pretty cool to see the way they are facilitating the cross-party dialogue that leads to good legislation for everyone up on Capitol Hill. Look at all these good groups and good people doing good work. Don't you feel a little bit better? And we get another lineup of Changemakers next week. So take time to check out our starting 5, learn more about their missions, and see where and how you can get involved. And as always, thank you for being a part of our community. Stay tuned, share a post, make a contribution, because together we are crossing our divide.